And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast. To be exact, I'm Hudson.
I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 29 of season 2, got to talk to you, the people, about a few quick things. First off, today's episode is going to be our last episode of our season evaluations series. So make sure to tune into past week episodes to kind of check out all of our different evaluations on Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Marcus Sasser, almost everybody except players that didn't play 20 games or less. So make sure to tune into those series evaluations just because those are good and informative episodes, just so that you get the inside look at what happened with these guys this season and why the Pistons maybe had a losing season and what maybe the Pistons have to look forward to with these players from what we saw last season. Also, if you look at our subscriber count, we are so close to 200 subscribers. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and get us over that edge, because that would just be a great success for the podcast. And we just greatly appreciate our subscribers. So make sure to be in the know and subscribe. Make sure to hit the bell button on our YouTube profile. That will be a button where you will be the first to know when we upload clips and episodes to our YouTube channel, so you can be in the know with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons. Also, last week we talked about the draft lottery and everything that conspired with the Pistons getting the 5th pick. We talk about the details, the fan expectations, our expectations, the statistics behind the Pistons getting the 5th pick overall. So make sure to tune into that episode. If you happen to like today's episode, hit that thumbs up button. And we're going to be talking about Cade Cunningham this week. So make sure to comment below your thoughts and opinions on this week's episode. Without further ado, let's get into it. Episode number 29 of season 2. We will be wrapping up our series of player evaluations with Cade Cunningham, and we're going to talk about his 23-24 season. First off, his averages in his third season with the Pistons. He averaged nearly 23 points per game, 4.3 rebounds. If you round it up, he had 8 assists per game and shot 54%. His best game of the season with the last 5 games, he wrapped up the season very well. On April 1st against the Minnesota Timberwolves, we lost by just 2 points. He put up 36 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 block, and 4 turnovers. Turnovers is going to be something that we have to talk about with Cade Cunningham in his last season. Ryan, what are some of your first thoughts when evaluating Cade Cunningham's third season in the NBA?
Well, to me, you kind of have to just get rid of the second season. This was his second season because last year only played 12 games, went out with the injury, never returned. And so now you have more games under your belt. 62 versus 12 last year, and then his rookie year, 64. So he played right around the same range as his rookie year. And so you go off of this year and again, you take away that second year because he barely played. He improved, and that's what everybody expected him to do. Every single season going forward, we're expecting Cade to get better and better and better each and every season. And he did that this year, although I will say his turnovers, like you mentioned, not great. They're still in the same ballpark to where he was in his rookie year. Averaged 3.7, nearly four turnovers a game his rookie year. And then this past year, 3.4, still right around that ballpark. So again, that's something he needs to fix and work on. But if you go along the stats of his rookie year to this year, like there has been improvements, and we saw a more complete Cade Cunningham that we've seen before, because he was not only just looking for his shot, but he was also facilitating. He was looking to pass. He was looking to defend. He was looking to do everything he possibly could so that like last year when he was just watching wasn't going to happen again, but it did. It was significantly worse,
Right.
even with him out there. So he did improve. There were a lot of things that were good. There were a lot of things that were bad. The bad basically just being the turnovers, and his shooting. It wasn't fantastic. Again, like you said, like 45% from the field, 35% from three, and then shot like, okay, 86, 87% at the line. Great. But outside of free throws, like you gotta, if you're gonna be the guy, you kind of have to shoot the ball at a pretty high clip, alongside of barely turning the ball over and doing this and that. But outside of his rookie year and eliminating last year, this season there was a lot of improvements.
Yeah, and when talking about this season, he showed us a lot of resilience, and I think that's going to be a big thing we're going to have to talk about in today's episode. But before we talk about what we are impressed by Cade Cunningham, let's talk about his best game of the season. It came on Tuesday, December 26th, the day after Christmas, versus the Brooklyn Nets, where he put up 41 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, 1 steal, and a loss to the Nets, 112 to 116. That was a very competitive game for the Detroit Pistons, but ended up falling short. That was one thing that the Cade Cunningham really showed us this season, is that he's going to put up numbers and it's going to be on every stat category, whether it's assists, points, rebounds, even defensively, he showed some improvements. But when talking about what we are most impressed by from what we saw from Cade Cunningham this season is, in my opinion, we saw Cade do what he does, and we know that he scores great offensively, very good at passing the ball. Obviously, that's going to be something we're impressed by. But something that off the court I was impressed by with Cade Cunningham was when the Detroit Pistons were going through their losing streaks, taking these, double-digit loss, tough losses. He went into pressers and was just like, yeah, we're bad. We need to get better. If this is the expectation of us, then where are our heads at? I really liked how at times he tried to rally the troops and show that he can be this vocal leader that we were so worried about if he could in seasons prior. But I think he really found himself as this rally the troops kind of a guy. And I think that has to speak to him maturing, finding himself in this league. He had many quotes that from this last season of saying that he finally feels like he understands the NBA. And I think that really made him have room to now be that vocal leader for the Pistons. And I think as a Pistons fan and worrying about what the future holds for this organization, I think it made me kind of have a sense of ease after seeing Cade Cunningham call out his peers on the team, call out the front office and be like, we got to figure this out. I'm not okay with this. If the players and front office is okay with this, then that means there's something wrong. And I just think that helped just kind of solidify win after win after these big losses, and try not to give themselves a deficit of losing streaks and stuff like that. That was one thing I took away from Cade Cunningham and was impressed by. Ryan, what are some of your thoughts on watching his 23-24 season that you were impressed by things that Cade Cunningham did?
Well, to go off of what you just said, I forget which game it was, but we were not doing great. We were going into halftime. In the locker room, Monty is sitting there like chewing everybody out, going like, "Hey, like what's going on right now?" And obviously I'm going to give Monty the green light in that situation. But Cade usually seems to be more on the laid back side, but he gave everyone an earful too. He chewed everybody out. He's like, "Hey, you got to fix this, you got to fix that," and then he even took accountability himself within that action. Is he's sitting there chewing everybody else out, but then he's like, "Hey, I got to do better too," and that's what a true leader does. They don't just nitpick here and there and try to fix everything else without taking accountability. They take accountability, and that's what Cade Cunningham did. Um, Fast forward, I believe we go on to win that game. I can't remember which one it was, but it was towards the end of the season. But again, like you said, Cade speaking up is a great thing. It's very impressive because all we know Cade as is a pretty chill and laid back dude. And unless we truly know the individual behind the scenes, we don't get much. So when we hear that kind of stuff, that's big and it's very impressive to see. And like I said earlier, like to me, his passing this year versus
Oh
his
yeah.
rookie year, and then even, I mean, the 12 games he played last year, drastically improved. I mean, when you look at the stats and break it down a little bit, yeah, you're going 5.5 assists to 7.5, nearly 8 assists, almost doubling it. And when you saw the Pistons actually competing out there, it wasn't just Cade looking for his shot or hitting tough shots here and there. It was him facilitating. It was him looking for the open shot. It was him looking to find Duran in the paint and let him cook. It was hitting Asar Thompson for a wide open three that normally 50% of the time he'd miss, but he actually made it. So Cade looking to pass the ball this year versus his rookie year where he was looking to just score, or even last year when in the 12 games he played, he was looking to just score. It was very impressive to me that it seemed like he was trying to have an all-around type season and not just focus on scoring. And like you said, he had that 41-point game. He's had games where he's looking to score, but in those same games, he's looking to also pass. And to me, when you go through everything that he did this year, outside of taking accountability and chewing people out and actually being a leader in the locker room, to me, it's his high passing rate and looking to find his teammates and pass the ball rather than just look for a shot. That was the most impressive thing to me this season.
Yeah, and to speak to Cade Cunningham's passing from this last season, I think that's why there's so many articles coming out about, the Pistons having to make a big splash in free agency, because now the organization and writers and commentators know that Cade Cunningham can be the passer an offense needs. And I think that was really solidified this season that, okay, when watching Cade Cunningham play this season, we see him trying to feed Jalen Duran, Jaden Ivey, and trying to find a Simone Fontecchio at the three-point line, letting him go to work. And I think it was so evident that if Cade Cunningham has the right guy next to him, he can be the guy that finds sneaky ways to get him the ball and make this offense proficient, whether it's Cade dumping it at the three-point line and having a shooter make those three-point shots. That wasn't really a role the Pistons had this season. Or it's a guy like a Donovan Mitchell or a Jaden Ivey as player where Cade Cunningham is able to swing the ball and watch that player go to work. And Cade Cunningham is there as a safety outlet around the three-point line. I think that this is going to be a big offseason because Cade Cunningham did show us that he may just be able to be one of these elite passers on top of his already savvy scoring ability. So that's going to be something to keep a close eye on for Detroit Pistons fans, and just kind of, keep a close eye. Is there anything that disappointed you this season, or something that you wish you saw from Cade Cunningham in his second, third season? Because I know that with the game starting to slow down for him, there's some things you're going to start wanting to see. Was there anything you were disappointed in, Ryan?
To me, it was just his shooting. His shooting, again, it's not bad compared to a lot of guys in the league. But if if he can improve in that category alongside what he's been able to do through his career, like if you just improve the shooting a little bit from three, I mean 35%, not great. I mean, he's drastically improved because his rookie year shooting 31%. Last year, even though it was only 12 games, shooting 27%, and then this year shooting 35%. So he has improved. But if you can hit those threes at a higher clip, and maybe not, or just shots in general, and maybe not look to force a couple shots up from time to time, I think that's where you go. But there weren't a lot of disappointments to me. It was just this season overwhelmingly was disappointing. It wasn't just Cade; it was everyone. His fouling went down. He rookie year, if we recall, he was fouling like crazy, averaging nearly 3-4 fouls a game. This year, 2.5 fouls a game. So like that's not bad. Like every category you'd look at and go, oh, that's a disappointment. It really isn't that disappointing, considering how the season went. It was just Cade did what he could, and there was a lot of room for improvement, but there's a lot of room for failure too, because when you are the face of a team, you get looked at with a closer lens. So to me, the biggest negative outside of turnovers would be just, I guess, his shooting, which isn't even that bad still. But again, if he can just get to like a Luka Doncic level of shooting, which Luka, great shooter, but he's not a phenomenal shooter. But if he can get to that level, then this is a completely different conversation. Cade would have had a fantastic season. But again, his shooting wasn't bad. It's just I'm being a little nitpicky.
Yeah, for me, when talking about the things that disappointed me with Cade Cunningham was, we know that, his passing improved, his scoring needs to be a little bit more refined and shoot at a higher clip. But it was just that his play didn't really translate into wins. A big thing for me is when you add certain players in free agency or through the draft, you draft a guy like Cade Cunningham and you hope that at least with his play, he will give you 15 wins just off of pure scoring, just off of him being able to completely handle the scoring load. And Cade Cunningham didn't necessarily show us that. So what I want to see from him next season is just strictly from his play alone translate into wins. Because if you have a guy like, let's just, for example, say Anthony Davis on the Los Angeles Lakers, if you have an Anthony Davis style player, he's going to at least give you just himself scoring load 15 wins. And that's what I kind of want to see from Cade Cunningham, is that if everything goes to crap in a game, everyone else on the roster is not scoring, they're just giving their buckets here and there. I want to see a Cade Cunningham be able to take over a game and surge the Pistons to a win. We see a guy like Devin Booker do that. We see guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard on the Los Angeles Clippers. So I don't need Cade Cunningham to be an absolute world beater. But when everything goes to crap in a game, Jaden Ivey's falling short and getting his 15 points per game. Jalen Duren isn't, getting all those points at the bucket, or Simone Fontecchio is falling short. I want a Cade Cunningham guy come in and just take over the game. And we didn't see that from Cade Cunningham this season. We maybe saw an example of that 2 to 3 times this season. It wasn't a common, frequently thing that happened. To kind of flip the coin a little bit, I kind of want to talk about the pulse of the Detroit Pistons and what everyone is talking about. And as some of you may know, during the season, Cade Cunningham sat down with Adrian Wojnarowski on the Woj pod, and a couple articles came from that. And when telling the full story of what happened with Cade Cunningham and the Pistons this season, this is an article I really want to talk about because it's going to tell the full story. And so I believe her name is Julia Stumbaum of Bleacher Report, wrote an article about Cade Cunningham's time sitting down with Adrian Wojnarowski and broke down some of the quotes. The article starts with saying the Detroit Pistons' historic 28-game losing streak might be over, but Pistons players won't forget about it anytime soon. Cade Cunningham said at that time, "This has been one of the most humbling experiences for me in my life, just as far as grounding myself and knowing that there's still so much work to do." Pistons guard Cade Cunningham told ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski. The quote continues to say, "I felt like even just as an individual, something like this could never happen to me," Cunningham said. "I felt like I was so good and I couldn't do that. I've understood and I realized it takes more than getting your own. It takes more than feeling good about your game." So Cade Cunningham taking some time aside and saying, it doesn't just matter how I'm playing, but it really means like this whole team effort is going to be what it takes to get these wins. And I think that was a big realization for Cade Cunningham. He comes out of Montverde, out of high school, a big, high prospect high school, on arguably one of the best high school teams ever to play as a unit. And then he goes to Oklahoma State and has some good success there, makes a little run in March Madness. And then he comes right into the Detroit Pistons organization after one season in college. And he thinks he's the guy, he thinks he's the man. And in these, 3 seasons with the Pistons and traveling with the team, I think it took him a little bit to realize, well, it's going to just take him to make this team win. And Ryan, I think that was a big realization for Cade Cunningham. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when you go back to any of our past successful teams, you look at the bad boys. Isaiah needed Joe. He needed Bill Laimbeer. He needed all those guys. Chauncey Billups needed Rip. He needed Ben. Like the point is, like, everybody needs somebody else. Jordan needed Pippen. LeBron, I mean, he needed Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, but he also needed Kyrie Irving at times and Kevin Love. But the point is, there's not one team where a star player doesn't need another individual beside them or other individuals besides them. And that's the point that Cade is trying to make here, is that it can't just be me that's the reason that we're winning these games or losing these games. It has to be everyone. And that's him, hey, going and taking a shot to his teammates a little bit and being like, hey, guys got to help me out. It's not just me. It's not just my team. It's our team. We need to go out there and win this together. Because there were times where you look at the season and it was really Cade doing his thing, and that was it at times. And then it was the rest of the team finally picking up the slack, and Cade is just non-existent. It wasn't both ways. It was just one way or the other. And so when you look at what this team could be like going forward, like, they all have to play together as a team. They can't just be individual accolades aside and focus on themselves. They have to play as a unit. That's what every successful team in the NBA is doing right now and has done in the past. You have to play as a team. There's no I in team, literally no I in team. But the point is, like, Jordan, if he didn't have Pippen, didn't have Rodman, Charles Oakley, Steve Kerr, etc., he's not winning a championship. He may be one of the greatest players to ever do it and may be the GOAT, but he's not doing it. You look at the Lakers with Magic Johnson and Kareem. Like, they needed everybody in order to win. Like, every single successful team in NBA history needs a unit of a team. Everybody has to play a part in order to win. It's not just one individual player. So Cade making that statement is really him calling out his teammates, going like, hey, we need to play as a team. That's the only way we win. And in that losing streak, I did not see a team playing. I saw individuals playing. They weren't playing together. And maybe you could blame Monty for that, because he's the coach. He's putting these rotations out there. It's his duty to do that. But I don't blame Monty too much for that. It's also Cade. Cade needs to step up and say something and not just sit back and focus on his game or the others focusing on their game. They need to play together as a team in order to be successful. And that's what I got from that.
Kind of prove our point that we talked about earlier about how we kind of felt like through the season, Cade Cunningham really found his role as being a vocal leader for the Pistons. This article goes on to say this from Julia and Bleacher Report. The losing streak was difficult for a young star who previously said his goal is to be a great leader for the Pistons. Cade Cunningham's quote continues to say, to continue to try to bring it and encourage the team, encourage the group to win this game, to have the energy up, and it's still not to go your way. Over time, after so many games, it's hard to keep it going, Cade Cunningham told Adrian Wojnarowski. He continues to say, being a great leader, you can't take days off. You have to keep it going. I think that's the main thing that I learned. It's just a lot about myself and how much I want it for me and for the team, and what it takes to continue to be a solid for the group, even when things do not go your way. I think this season, was a big learning season for Cade Cunningham. I think this season was needed to learn all these lessons for the Detroit Pistons to be that much better for seasons to come and for Pistons fans. And I think when talking about a theme for this last season, after completely looking over the evaluations and the players and now looking at it as a whole, it was a learning season. It was trials and tribulations. Those 28 game losing streaks happened for a reason. And I think that it's going to prove in seasons to come. Ryan, before we give Cade Cunningham his grade for the 23-24 season, what are your thoughts on areas for him to improve? You know, we talked about how we were impressed on his growth in passing, and then we talked about how we were a little bit disappointed in certain aspects of his season as far as like shooting percentages. But what is one area for him to improve on next season?
It's not statistical. It's not stats really. It's there needs to be like he needs to let some anger out. He needs to show emotions on the court in games. Whenever you're down and you make it a little bit, get into it a little bit better, and it's a comeback. Show emotion. That's what everybody's wanting out of you right now is showing emotion. If you can just light that fire underneath him, and kind of like Anthony Edwards in the playoff, he hits a tough shot. He's flexing. He's going off. He's letting people know, hey, I'm that guy. Like Cade, if you can do that for me, that's one area that I would like to see improvement is just his overall leadership on the court. What comes out, what hides, like show some emotions. But if we're going stats based, limit the turnovers, please. Limit the turnovers. Because there's games in the past where he had 10 turnovers and it's like, oh my goodness, Cade, why are you passing the ball like that? Like we know you have a high IQ. We know you can make that pass. But hey, don't force it from time to time. Just improve on that category alone. And otherwise, he had a great season. There's nothing that I'm really negative on outside of the turnovers. And again, like I nitpicked a little bit earlier, his 3-point shooting could get much better than what it is. But he did improve this year versus his rookie year. And then even in the 12 games that he played last year, he did improve. So 3-point shooting, get a little boost there, and then turnovers, limit the turnovers, and show emotion on the court and show everyone why you were the number one pick and why you were the guy.
Yeah, you know, when talking about how Cade Cunningham can improve, I kind of agree to one of your points is that he just didn't really have the dog in him. When the Pistons were down 20 points, you could visibly see on his face that he was upset, that he felt like it was over. And it reminded me a lot of like in the 2010s when Jay Cutler was the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bulls in the NFL. Whenever the Bears rather, whenever the Bears were down like 3 to 4 touchdowns, you could see through Jay Cutler's face mask that he just was like giving up. He's like, I want a cigarette. I'm done with this. Like you could just tell. And I think that set a big precedent for the Bears and that organization. And I think that I don't want that for the Pistons with Cade Cunningham. There's so many memes on Pistons, social media, like about Cade Cunningham's faces he makes, and with tears coming down his face. Like there's so many things, and I think the Pistons fans have taken notice so drastically of Cade Cunningham's facial expressions, and I think it sets a precedent for the roster itself when whoever's on the court while Cade Cunningham is sulking on the bench. And so I do think that's one thing he needs to improve on if he wants to be this true great leader for the Pistons. I think that's the kind of thing he needs to work on in order for this organization to make a change for the better, because it all starts with players. Ryan, we've talked about the positives, the negatives, the averages, the statistics, what the commentators and sports writers think. When talking about Cade Cunningham's season, what grade would you put on his report card?
See, it's tough because, like I said, he did not have a bad season. The team had a bad season. So because of that, and then like you said about the analogy with Anthony Davis bringing 15 wins just off scoring alone, Cade at times did not do that this season. in certain games. So when you look at everything from this is tough because I want to give him a, but I feel like it has to be a B plus or a B just because of the season overall, because it is his team. He is the leader. He is supposed to be the guy. And so I know it doesn't all just rest on his shoulders, but with him being the leader on this team, it kind of does. So with that being said, I think I got to have it. Yeah, it's tough. I'm torn on this, but I'm going to give him a B plus because yeah, again, it's his team. He's supposed to be the leader. He didn't show that at times, but he didn't have a bad season at all. So you know what? I'll bump it up. A minus.
All right, sounds good. I think for me, when figuring out a grade, I just for like the sake of my mind and like analyzing him, I'm gonna take out the thought of the losing season and just go strictly based on what I saw from Cade Cunningham on the court, him as a player, and his just for his performance report, not the Pistons performance report. So when I look at his play as it is, I think, 22 points, that's a little nice. I'd like to see a bump next season. I don't think that's where he's going to be at his prime season. 5 assists, that's pretty good. Let's go with, just because I don't think he's in his prime yet, I'm going to give him a B, just because I think in his prime, he's going to be a much better player. I just still think he's like a couple years out from where he's going to be at his best. So I'm going to give Cade Cunningham on his 23-24 season a B grade. Ryan, any last thoughts when talking about Cade Cunningham's 23-24 season?
That run in which it was post All-Star break. He finally showed up. That the last 5 games of the season, especially, 20 plus points every single night. Didn't have a bad game during that stretch. He finally showed up. And if you can have that as your last 5 games going into the season, and now I understand the teams in most of those games are in the playoffs. They're not going to have their best guys out there at all times. They're going to rest them a little bit. So I understand Cade is pretty much going up against bench warmers. But the point is, like, he showed up. And if you can add those last 5 games of the season to pretty much tease what's going to come this upcoming season, then I'm pretty darn excited for Cade Cunningham, because if he can have that last 5 games all season long this upcoming year, I'm pretty excited. And then obviously, who knows what's going to happen in the draft? Who knows what's going to happen in free agency? But if Cade can play the last 5 games of this past season to continue that onto this upcoming season and throughout the whole year, Cade Cunningham is going to put on a show.
Yeah, just for reference, Cade's last 3 games of the season, each night were over 30 points. I believe it was 33, 31, and then 35. So he ended the season very, very strong. It was nice for the fans to kind of see him wrap up the season in high regard. It was kind of a nice little takeaway for Pistons fans. That will do it for episode number 29 of season 2. We are so close to 200 subscribers, so make sure to get us over that 200 mark. We would greatly appreciate it. Make sure to like and comment below your thoughts on today's episode, and we will see you guys in episode number 30 of season 2. Peace.